Echoes of the Asylum. Day 1. The old asylum loomed over us, its crumbling facade a grim reminder of the horrors it once housed. The place had a reputation, a chilling legend of dark experiments and restless spirits. The excitement among us, Jake, Emma, Noah, and me, was palpable. We were urban explorers chasing the thrill of the unknown, oblivious to the true darkness that awaited us. As nightfall bathed the asylum in shadows, we slipped through a broken window on the west side. The air inside was suffocatingly stale, a cocktail of rot and neglect. Our flashlights barely cut through the darkness, illuminating remnants of a bygone era, peeling wallpaper, shattered furniture, and faded graffiti. "Let's check out the main hall first," I suggested, trying to mask the unease I felt. The others nodded, though their faces were pale with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Day 2. We ventured into the administration wing. The walls were adorned with eerie portraits of patients, eyes hollow, expressions frozen in terror. Emma, ever the skeptic, flipped through a file cabinet, her flashlight illuminating documents that spoke of failed treatments and unethical experiments. The atmosphere grew heavy. A sudden chill swept through the corridor, and a low, mournful moan echoed. Jake's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows. I turned and glimpsed a dark, ethereal shape moving swiftly across the hall. "What was that?" Jake stammered, his voice tinged with fear. We hesitated, then followed the shadow into an old operating room. The sight was ghastly, rusted tools and blood-stained equipment. I noticed something strange, faint, scratch-like markings on the walls, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Day 3. Descending a hidden staircase, we found the basement, a labyrinth of dark tunnels and forgotten rooms. It was here the asylum's history began to unveil itself. In one room, jars of preserved organs and grotesque specimens lay scattered. A diary, its pages yellowed and brittle, revealed the asylum's horrifying past. The diary spoke of experiments designed not just to test human endurance but to bind souls to the asylum's dark power. As I read, I felt a cold presence. Turning, I saw a ghostly figure, a disfigured patient with hollow eyes. Its mournful wail sent shivers down my spine. Day 4. The ghosts in the asylum were not mere apparitions, they were vengeful entities, their suffering transforming them into malevolent forces. Each room we entered was more nightmarish than the last, shadows slithering along the walls, whispers of torment growing louder, and a suffocating sense of dread. Noah was the first to vanish. One moment he was with us, the next, he was screaming, his cries echoing through the asylum. Emma and Jake followed soon after, disappearing into the suffocating darkness. I was left alone, the silence oppressive, the asylum's sinister whispers filling the void. Day 5. Desperation drove me to the asylum's control room, a room covered with old monitors flickering with static. A large map on the wall marked the locations of the experiments. The map showed that the asylum itself was a twisted maze, designed to trap and torment. As I approached the map, I saw him, the head doctor, his face twisted in a grotesque grin. "Welcome," he said, his voice a chilling whisper that sent ice through my veins. "You've come to join us." The doctor revealed the asylum's true nature, a nexus of suffering, a place where souls were trapped to feed an ancient, malevolent entity. The asylum wasn't just haunted, it was alive, thriving on the despair it had created. Day 6. I don't know how long I've been here. Time seems irrelevant in this place. I hear the distorted voices of my friends, their pleas for help merging with the whispers of the asylum. The walls shift, the shadows move, and I am perpetually trapped in this nightmare. Every time a new group of explorers enters, I see their fear and hope. But they are just as doomed as I am. The asylum's hunger is insatiable, and it will continue to feed on the souls of the curious and the brave. A month later, the asylum's decaying walls stand as a dark invitation. New explorers, drawn by the legend and thrill, will enter, eager for adventure but unaware of the true horror that awaits. The asylum's whispers will grow louder, its shadows more menacing, as it continues its eternal hunger for the next soul to torment. Story 2. The Phantom App. Day 1. The air was thick with anticipation as my friends and I gathered in the dimly lit living room, the last rays of sun casting long shadows. We had just heard about an app called Phantom, an app claiming to show glimpses of our futures. It sounded too intriguing to pass up. Jake, our tech guru, was the first to download it. "Check this out," he said, showing us his phone screen. The app had a sleek, minimalist design with a black background and a single, ominous white button, "See Your Future." We laughed nervously as Jake tapped the button. The screen flickered, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then it flashed a scene so horrifying it made us gasp, a brutal car crash with bodies thrown violently from the wreckage, blood streaming over broken glass. "It's probably just a sick joke," I said, my voice betraying a hint of unease. Day 2. What started as a morbid curiosity soon became a grim routine. Jake showed us more predictions, grotesque and graphic scenes of violence. Emma decided to try it herself, and her screen displayed a nightmarish vision. She was chained in a dark room, a gruesome figure looming over her with a knife. "I think this is more than just a prank," Emma said, her voice trembling. The following day, Emma narrowly avoided a dangerous encounter when a rusty chain fell from a construction site, almost catching her leg. The coincidence was too chilling to ignore. Day 5. As the app's predictions became increasingly violent, fear gripped us. Jake saw himself being violently thrown from a high-rise building, his body smashing into the pavement below. Noah witnessed a grotesque vision of himself being dismembered by a wild animal. The app seemed to turn our deepest fears into grim reality. Our lives started unraveling as the app's predictions materialized. Jake's near-fatal fall during a party was a terrifying echo of his vision, and Noah's encounter with a stray dog left him with severe injuries. We were no longer just intrigued, we were desperate. Day 8. Determined to end the nightmare, we dug into the app's origins. We discovered that Phantom was created by a shadowy corporation notorious for unethical experiments. They had perfected a technology that didn't merely predict the future, it engineered it to feed off human fear. In Jake's basement, surrounded by old tech and scattered papers, we uncovered fragments of the app's code. It revealed a disturbing truth: the app was a conduit for an ancient, malevolent entity that thrived on suffering and dread. Day 10. We decided to confront the app's creators. Our investigation led us to a decrepit building on the outskirts, hidden behind layers of secrecy and bureaucracy. The building was a labyrinth of dark, oppressive corridors, each one colder and more sinister than the last. We reached the main server room, a cavernous space filled with buzzing monitors and tangled wires. The app's code was projected on a massive screen, depicting scenes of grotesque violence and suffering. The air was thick with a malevolent presence, and the walls seemed to pulse with an eerie, rhythmic thumping. Day 11. As we worked to dismantle the server, the spirits trapped by the app's predictions materialized around us, twisted, tortured souls with eyes hollowed out by fear. Their wails echoed through the room, a cacophony of anguish and desperation. The server fought back. Shadows coiled and lashed out, the temperature plummeted, and the very walls seemed to close in on us. The final confrontation was a harrowing struggle against both the spirits and the app's dark energy. With a final, desperate effort, we destroyed the server. The spirits' wails turned into agonized screams before fading into silence. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, but the damage was done. The app's malignant presence had been silenced, but not before it left its mark on us. Day 12. We returned to our lives, forever scarred by the app's horrors. The once innocuous app had unleashed a living nightmare. Each of us carried the psychological scars of what we had witnessed. A few weeks later, while browsing through my phone, I saw an eerily familiar app trending. Your future awaits. My heart raced as I read the description, which was hauntingly similar to phantoms. The cycle of terror was beginning anew. The sun sets once more, casting long shadows. Somewhere, in the dark corners of the internet, a new app awaits its next victims. The cycle of fear and suffering continues, and the malevolent entity remains ever hungry for new souls to torment. Story 3. The Last Message. I was alone in the house, the kind of quiet that settles in after a storm. The gentle hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the otherwise still room. I had just finished sorting through a pile of old photos when my phone buzzed, its screen lighting up with a message. It was from Richard's number. My heart skipped a beat. Richard, my husband, had passed away 3 months ago. I hadn't touched his phone since his death, still keeping it as a memento, a tangible link to him. I stared at the screen, my breath catching in my throat as I read the message. Why haven't you been honest with him? At first, I thought it was a cruel prank. I tried to shake it off, but the uneasy feeling lingered. Another message arrived, this time in the middle of the night. I was jolted awake by the buzz of my phone on the bedside table. I fumbled for the light, my heart racing. The message was even more disturbing. I see what you do when you think no one is watching. I was terrified. My immediate reaction was to question if someone had hacked into Richard's old number. I checked my privacy settings, but everything seemed in order. My thoughts raced, but I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that Richard's phone had been hacked, or worse. The messages escalated. This time, they were more specific and alarming. Why are you lying to your friends about his death? The message was followed by another, Anna knows. I saw you with him. Anna was my closest friend, and I had shared a private moment with her about how difficult things had been. My mind raced. How could someone know about our conversations, about the personal things we had discussed? I decided to confront Anna. She was shocked and reassured me that she had no idea about any of this. Her concern for me seemed genuine, but I couldn't help but feel more isolated, more paranoid. The messages continued to grow more disturbing. Be careful tomorrow. Someone will come to your door. The next day, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I answered, there was no one there, just a small package on the doorstep. Inside was an old photograph of Richard and me, but with a chilling addition, an ominous shadowy figure looming behind us. I was terrified. The photograph was clearly tampered with, but how did someone know I'd be home? And who was that figure? Determined to uncover who was behind these messages, I began investigating Richard's old belongings. Among his things, I found a notebook filled with names and symbols. One name stood out, Jonas Wexler, a known occultist whose activities had been reported but never solved. The symbols were a mixture of occult sigils and cryptic writing. I decided to investigate Jonas Wexler. My research revealed that he had been involved in dark rituals and was part of a network practicing occult magic and performing ritualistic sacrifices. One name that stood out was Sarah, a former associate of Wexler's who had distanced herself from dark practices but was still connected to our community. Sarah agreed to meet with me. She was pale, her eyes haunted. Wexler and his followers were involved in rituals to gain power, she explained. Richard must have stumbled onto something he shouldn't have, and they used him to further their dark goals. As Sarah spoke, she mentioned another key figure, Mark Harlan, a wealthy philanthropist with rumored ties to the occult network. Mark had been a significant donor to charity events where Wexler's influence was suspected. Sarah's information suggested that Mark might be directly involved or know more about the network's operations. The final message arrived with a chilling prediction. Tonight is the night you will learn the truth. The shadows will reveal all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I waited in the dark, feeling like I was being watched. Around midnight, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. My phone buzzed again, but I was too afraid to look. Instead, I crept around the house, using a flashlight. In the dim light, I noticed a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. My breath caught in my throat. As I approached the figure, it seemed to dissolve into the darkness. In its place was a recording device. I pressed play, and the recording was a distorted voice speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The last message played over the recording. The truth is not what you think. Richard's death was not an accident. It was orchestrated by someone you trust. The next morning, I contacted Sarah for help and learned that Mark Harlan had recently vanished under suspicious circumstances. The authorities had launched an investigation, linking him to Wexler's network. It seemed that Mark's disappearance was connected to the network's efforts to cover their tracks. The police investigation revealed a network of people involved in dark rituals, including Mark and Sarah. It was clear that Richard's death was part of a ritualistic sacrifice orchestrated by this group. Sarah had been trying to protect me by warning me about the network, and her fears were justified. In the aftermath of the revelations, I was left to grapple with the emotional weight of what I had uncovered. The house felt colder, the shadows more ominous. Each creak of the floorboard seemed louder, each gust of wind through the windows more unsettling. I couldn't shake the feeling that the entity behind the messages was still out there, watching me, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. Sarah became a close ally, offering support and helping me navigate the aftermath of the revelations. We worked together to piece together the network's remaining activities and ensure that no one else fell victim to their dark practices. Despite our efforts, the feeling of being watched never left me, and the shadowy figure from that night remained a haunting presence in my mind. The final message on Richard's phone remained a chilling reminder. Even in death, you are never truly alone. The shadows will always be watching. Story 4. The Doll from Kyoto. When my daughter, Lily, returned from her trip to Japan, her suitcase was filled with trinkets and souvenirs. Among the assortment of keychains, kimonos, and wooden dolls was a beautifully ornate antique doll she had picked up from a quaint shop in Kyoto. Its porcelain face, with its delicate painted features and intricate traditional dress, immediately caught my eye. Lily had been over the moon about it, and I'd smiled as I watched her excitedly show off her new treasure. The doll was carefully placed on a shelf in Lily's room. It was a charming piece, with a serene smile and dark, lifelike eyes that seemed to follow us around the room. We didn't think much of it until things began to change. It started subtly, small things. Lily would wake up in the middle of the night, claiming she heard whispers or saw shadows moving in her room. We brushed it off as nightmares. Then, a few days later, my son Alex, who had always been a sweet, easygoing boy, began acting strangely. He was irritable and withdrawn, and he would mutter to himself in a language we couldn't understand. One evening, while we were having dinner, Alex suddenly froze, his gaze fixed on the doll. "The doll," he said in a voice that wasn't quite his own, "it's mine." His words were accompanied by a look of pure terror. I tried to dismiss it as a childish fear or a bad dream, but Lily was visibly shaken. That night, Alex's behavior escalated. He began screaming and thrashing in his bed, his eyes wide and unseeing. When we rushed into his room, we found him clutching the doll tightly, as if it were a lifeline. No matter how we tried to pry it away, he wouldn't let go. His strength seemed unnaturally strong, and his eyes, once filled with innocence, were now dark and hollow. Desperate, we sought professional help, but nothing seemed to alleviate the situation. Alex's behavior continued to deteriorate. He began speaking in cryptic phrases and would often break into fits of rage when anyone approached the doll. His once bright personality was replaced by a dark, menacing presence. To tighten the pacing, I decided to streamline the narrative around Alex's escalating behavior. Key scenes were intensified to build suspense and maintain narrative momentum. His interactions with the doll were shown with more urgency, focusing on specific incidents that highlighted his transformation. Each moment became more intense, heightening the reader's anxiety as Alex's grip on reality weakened. The doll seemed to have a hold over him. Lily noticed that whenever Alex was near it, the doll's eyes seemed to glint with a sinister light, and its smile appeared to widen, as if it were feeding off his fear and turmoil. It became clear that something malevolent was at play. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, I decided to investigate the doll further. I combed through online forums and databases, searching for any information on haunted dolls. What I found was chilling. The doll's origin was traced back to an old Japanese legend about a spirit trapped in a vessel. The spirit was known to possess children, feeding off their fear and despair to gain strength. The more I learned, the more I realized that the doll was not merely haunted, it was a vessel for an ancient and vengeful spirit. The spirit's primary goal was to break the will of its victims and feed on their fear, and it had chosen Alex as its next target. I shared my findings with Lily and my wife, Emily. We were terrified but determined to save our son. We tried everything we could to help him, but nothing seemed to work. The doll's influence over Alex grew stronger, and his behavior became more erratic. Lily, who had always been close to Alex, was distraught. She remembered their childhood memories, their shared laughter, and how Alex had always been a protective older brother. Emily, on the other hand, struggled to balance her grief with the urgency to help her son. Her past experiences and her bond with Alex gave her the strength to keep fighting, even when hope seemed lost. One evening, Alex's behavior reached a horrifying peak. In a fit of uncontrollable rage and despair, he ran to the window and, with a scream of anguish, hurled himself out. The impact was fatal, and Alex was pronounced dead at the hospital. In the wake of Alex's death, the doll was mysteriously gone. It had vanished from the shelf in Lily's room. Despite our best efforts to find it, the doll seemed to have disappeared without a trace. We were left to grapple with our grief and the horrifying realization that the malevolent spirit was no longer bound to Alex. The loss of Alex was devastating, and the emptiness left by the doll's disappearance was equally haunting. It was as if the spirit had claimed what it came for and left, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and despair. As we tried to piece our lives back together, a chilling thought haunted us. The doll had found its vessel in Alex, but now it was searching for its next victim. I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness connected to the doll had not truly been vanquished, only temporarily hidden. It was out there, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. In the quiet moments of our lives, we would sometimes catch glimpses of unsettling shadows or hear faint whispers that seemed to echo the spirit's lingering malice. The doll's absence did little to ease the dread that had settled over our family. The doll was gone, but the terror it left behind served as a grim reminder of the darkness that can hide behind the most innocent of objects. And as we moved forward, we remained ever vigilant, haunted by the knowledge that something malevolent still lurked, searching for its next vessel.